Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
If we don't have anybody signed in, Melissa and Nick are on Zoom. All right, so Joe, roll call, please.
Ms. Cimaroli?
Here.
Mr. Tolmer?
Here.
Mr. Livingston?
Here.
Ms. Giuliani?
Here.
Ms. Bellamar?
Here.
And I'm Joe Cowher.
All right, so adoption of minutes for the January meeting. Any changes, recommendations? Anita first.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, now, new business.
There's a little bit of a lag time
Melissa said
between
aye
us
as well.
and Zoom. So.
We'll
wait a second or two after each. Yeah.
So our first topic for discussion this evening is the zoning amendment in residential districts to govern location and size of off-street parking. Several months, a parking pad. Several months ago, we had a similar discussion and shelved it for a little while. So does anybody want to start this discussion? Dale? No?
You know, it's difficult in Bridgeville. You know, I drove around and looked at the places that Joe had permit requests for, and I don't disagree with any of what he's done. However, I mean, there's places in town where people have larger front yards and access to the backyards. So I'm just kind of curious what we're thinking with this and where we really want to go with this. I mean, there's places in town where I've got no issues because the lots are so small and there's no access to the backyard. And if they had access to the backyard, there isn't that much room to begin with.
Right.
So
I think the issue, and I think, is the fact that, you know, if you look at some of the areas where people did have access to their backyard, or even a driveway that goes to the side of their house, and then they still put a massive parking pad that covers the front of their house, it's like, you had it all, but you're still taking up, and the only reason why you did it was for spite, so nobody would park in front of your house. I think that's where, you know, you're coming into an issue. So, which is one of the reasons why we asked to look at different towns and see what they had, get an idea. So, you know, if you're in a place and there's nowhere to put your car and you can't really park on the street, then you basically ask the borough and say, you know, can I get a variance to do that? And they say, yeah, that makes sense. But if somebody comes and says, look, I want to put a 40 by 20 cement pad in front of my house, can I do that? And they're like, no, you have a driveway. Literally, you have a driveway you can put that goes along the side of your house, and you can put a carport wherever you want to do. You know, so then you say no. So I think that's one of the
well,
big
and I mean, the question then becomes, how do we give Joe the direction to be able to do that? Because it's, you know, it's kind of, I don't think it's cut and dry.
Well, exactly, which is, I mean, we have zoning rules, we have zoning laws on the book that says you can't just build something like, you know, whatever you want. And if you're in a position where you're trying to build something and you're trying to change it because it doesn't fit the, you know, the way it's in the zoning, you go and you ask for a variance. And, you know, so I would think it'd be treated just the same way.
That's my next question is the zoning board is separate from this discussion and they may have a very different take on this. I don't know.
And that's exactly, and all we are as a planning commission, we can just make a recommendation to say, is this something that we want to, you know, can you look at this as making this a rule? All we can do is make a recommendation. You know, whether they adopt it, we might say, we want you to do this, and they look at it and say, no, we're not going to adopt it, and discussion's over. You know. Is that right?
Yeah, that's spot on. Like, if you were going to go with that train of thought, you could say, like, they're only permitted if you have rear access, you know, to be in the back. And then that kind of sets you up for a variance, because then there's the hardship, because they don't have access to
Yeah,
that.
so I think we're all talking about.
Wait a minute, run that by me again?
I think if you were good, if it was gonna be written as an ordinance,
Yeah.
it would say, off-street parking pads in residential districts are only permitted in the rear yard where there is vehicular access, like an alley.
Yeah,
And then, let's just say if I lived on a street that didn't have an alley, I would come and say, I would end up denying it, because obviously you can only have it back there, and you can come back and say, that's my hardship.
Right.
They don't have an alley.
Right.
Well, there's your ticket to the zoning hearing board.
Right.
Yeah, the other side of this though is looking at some of the 3 or 4 that Joe had already given permission for. There was one of them that's just this huge pad in the front yard.
Yeah,
Right.
So, I mean, we need to, I think we need to look at,
well,
And I said, we looked at, I said, and if you looked at other towns, and there was verbiage in some of them where it
Right.
said, like,
A
you
percentage.
could have a percentage, or you could have a driveway that's to the side of the house, you know, so you basically goes up to the side, which, you know, nobody's, I don't think people, if you had, hey, I want to put a driveway up on the side of the house, people aren't gonna, you know.
but I think the one that we're thinking about
Right.
already had a driveway
It's-
and a double parking.
That's what I'm
pad.
saying, that's what I'm saying, we all know which one we're talking about, it's a,
Right.
it's like a basketball court in front of their house.
Okay, so, all right, so if they can have access to their rear yard for a parking pad, and then if they can't go, if they can't have access, then they go for a zoning change,
And they can apply for a variance,
for a variance for their front yard.
because there's a hardship.
Now, are we gonna identify what is required for the front yard? Like size-wise and
You
maybe?
can, because you've seen that in Carnegie.
Yeah,
Carnegie
exactly.
Yeah,
has
I
that.
think
Carnegie had
Carnegie's-
one of what we,
Had the width of a curb cut.
right, exactly.
Right, right.
And then you just have to identify the size, because some streets here don't have curbs, and
Right.
they don't have to cut it.
And
So it's really-
there's a big difference too between, like, you say you lived on McLaughlin Run, I mean, that's mixed use, isn't it considered
Mhm.
mixed use? So it's a big difference between putting, you know, a cement pad in front of a house where it's mixed use than say up on, you know, Winfield Drive or something.
Right.
You know,
yeah. I mean, the other thing that Carnegie said was not more than like 30 feet of the front yard could be devoted to driveway access, blah, blah. blah.
Right, right.
So, you know, I think there needs to be something along those lines if we're
Exactly.
gonna limit the size of the front yard.
mhm.
Okay, I have a question. We had this conversation,
Yeah.
however many months ago.
Yeah.
And I thought we voted on
The
being like
Carnegie.
Carnegie's, because I remember thinking shady size was stronger.
Right,
But-
yeah,
but
exactly.
I get
So
it.
we-
Shady
Yeah.
size is
You
not
wanted to go
exactly-
back and tell people to jackhammer what they put in.
Exactly.
You're
Okay,
like,
but
grandfather who?
having said that, so I'm not sure why are we doing this again? Did we not?
Because I sort of thought that we left it a little unwrapped before I want to
Vague.
tidy it up, a
Vague.
little vague.
All
I
right.
want to tidy it up
Did
so
we
that.
not say, yes, we should do it, and here's the.
That's what I thought, I thought we thought Carnegie. but we
No,
didn't.
it came, as it got recommended to me was, have the solicitor
Right,
prepare us
right.
an ordinance, bring it back to us. And I told Justine the same thing you said, is that why waste the money on the solicitor if the borough council's gonna say, we don't even like the idea.
Yeah.
Come up with just the 5,000-foot recommendation, we'll send it up, and if they like it, they can
Okay.
make the motion to authorize the solicitor to prepare an ordinance.
Okay.
So I think that what it sounds like is if there is just like a interest, we can kick around some ideas, type up something that we can present at our next meeting as a
Yeah.
discussion, and then if we get that all worked out by then, at the March meeting, we have a
Okay.
recommendation vote. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
And maybe what I can do between now and our next meeting is that tailor just some language piggybacking the Carnegie driveway width, send it to you guys maybe via email, we could flush that out, and then next month's meeting, we could
Just adopt it.
and tweak it. And from there.
Okay.
Sound good?
Does Melissa have anything to add?
Well, I do have a question. I mean, can we write something in there about, that those pads, once they are approved, cannot be littered with traffic cones and signs and all this, like, garbage? Or would that be like a different ordinance?
Well, you gotta be more specific. Traffic cones, garbage, the little signs that say slow down. I mean, there's a whole ballywick of stuff that you could put in there. I mean, do you mean like just orange cones or?
Yeah, I mean, if people are gonna build the pad and then put cones and big signs about no trespassing, no turning around, no parking in front of this, it's just, I don't know, to me, that makes these pads look far worse.
And again, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, of course, yeah, and, yeah, because that was not even being used, other than to hold the cones and the signs to, warning people to keep out.
I don't know if you can put any, that's a tough one there, telling somebody you can't put a no trespassing sign or no parking in front of their house sign.
Well,
I think at
they're
the planning commission level,
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter to
Yeah.
us. If that's part of the recommendation, throw it into the letter
Okay.
and then let Borough Council decide.
alright,
Okay, a couple of
But
questions.
that's just my thought.
gotcha.
Thanks, Melissa. Couple of questions. Are we allowed to determine how far away from the property line?
We're-
Okay, all right, because I think originally we're 8 foot now, correct? I saw 8 foot somewhere.
I honestly don't know.
Okay.
I'd have to read it.
And then my other question is, are we allowed to determine the makeup of that hardscape? And I know I called you earlier
I'm pretty sure you could. I
because,
worked for a community that regulated curb cuts, and that the 70 feet behind the curb had to be concrete, just so that if it was gravel, they didn't want the gravel to kick out on the street.
right,
So they
Good point.
regulated that the
Yeah.
first 70 feet had to be concrete, behind it they didn't care.
Well, I mean, could it be bituminous?
Could be anything. Well,
It's something hard rather than
What-
gravel.
so are we talking, hold on for one, where I'm going is, I'm wondering, since we have enough issues with water runoff, all right? I would like to see a permeable top so that it is absorbed by the ground as opposed to going into the alleyway, something like that.
I understand where you're coming from.
I had talked to Joe today, asking him whether or not, I wanted to see the square footage cost of everything. Because I know everybody's going, the gray stone, yeah, yeah. The gray stone is such, it's such a thickness or whatever, it's okay, but really, I don't want stone. If we're gonna do it, I think we should do it the least expensive way, but something that is not so offensive. You get my gist.
So, I mean, what you're talking about is some sort of I lost my train of thought. Some sort of like patio, I don't want, not patio brick, but.
You can
some
have.
Paper stone.
Paper stones,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like I said,
Yeah.
we're down in Savannah, they had permanent parking, and basically like a inlay with round, hard plastic, and you
Yeah.
fill it with stone.
Right, or you can fill it with grass or
Yeah,
whatever. I mean, there's a variety,
Right.
but again, I realize we have to be cost conscious for our residents.
Yeah.
Right.
So I really don't want to make it exorbitant, but at the same time, I have a little bit of a problem with stone,
Yeah, well,
unless it's pea stone, or pea grass, pea something or
yeah,
whatever.
but I mean, even that, ends up out on the street. Pretty issue.
So how do you think we should handle, we should find out the cost per square foot and then take it
But
from.
of what material? Like,
Well, I mean, obviously, we're not gonna want to go to the residents and say, okay, this is gonna cost you $15 a square foot. All right, when there is something that's adequate for $8 a square foot, all right? So can we,
Well, I'm just gonna suggest, I think you need to be really careful with the whole, this is adequate. Like, it works, but it doesn't work, or it achieves the objective, but not quite.
right,
You know, if.
as long as
we
it's
need-
not as long as it's not impermeable asphalt, impermeable cement, or stone.
Concrete temporary.
Right. But they also now have permeable concrete and permeable asphalt.
Now you're talking expensive.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but we're not going to tell them that they can't use it.
Right.
Well, if we're gonna emasculate it from the day that we put it out there, but I don't know why we're doing that. If we're gonna do it,
Well,
we
then
need
we
to do
just
it.
say a permeable
What about
surface.
going back to the folks at Carnegie, for example, it's been a while since I read it, but I don't believe that they dilly-dallied or shilly-shallied or screwed around with the product that you had to use.
They
Did
didn't
they
say
not lay it
anything.
out?
No, I don't, not that.
Okay, mine keep dropping. Well,
Anyway, just let's just say a permeable surface then.
Well, they can't use this if it's a sidewalk, you can't pour a sidewalk, is that, or?
For the sidewalk, that's a different, for the parking pad itself.
But if it's gonna be so many feet, say there's a sidewalk in front of their house and they're gonna cut it, you know, and then like slope it down, that should be cement to match the sidewalk, if there is a
Correct.
sidewalk, I would think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So you would like me to calculate the cost of various materials for a 10 by 10 square?
Yeah,
Okay. And then we'll bring it back next month.
yeah. Okay. All right. Anybody else out there have any questions? All right, so any else that we need to add to this? Joe, you have enough to work with? Okay. All right, the next new business is a creation of rental property inspection programs. And I did find out a lot within the last 2 days about rental programs. And to me, they sound like a good idea. Anybody else have any comments?
I think, you and me talked yesterday, I think this is something, and it might be, we might already have something on the books for rental properties, but, I think this is something where we wanna, when we had the floods, the last couple of times, we try to reach out to the property owners, we find out that they're not even in this town, they're living states away, and they're basically buying a piece of property, renting them, and not taking care of them.
Right.
We kind of want to put something that's in teeth that says, hey, you can't just buy a piece of property and not take care of it, and just have rental, tenants, and not take, you gotta manage your properties.
All right. I think in this day and age, where we do know that outsiders are coming in and buying multiple rental properties.
But this is, as I said to Justine, this isn't to the people who live here in town and own rental property and, we know who they are.
Right.
It's for the people who, just like I said, they're just buying these property.
I mean, from what I looked at from surrounding communities, none of them seem to be very obsessive. I mean, it's simply that you file an application and you get the information from the owner as well as the information from the renter.
Are you looking at this as just a registration program
No.
or an inspection program?
Inspection.
As regard to what you're talking about registrations, we have.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I did notice that they give it to the tax person, they give it to Anne Marie.
No, it's the police clerk
Oh, okay.
manages
Okay.
this.
All right. But no, okay, I didn't realize that we had
Registration.
registration. Okay.
Does everybody do that to the best of our knowledge?
It's one of those things where majority do, but like anything, we constantly have to be very proactive because they just pop up.
So,
But there's no charge for registration. It's rather
okay,
you fill in your annual report, says who's in unit 1, 2, 3. This is the landlord, and that's it.
now.
Which is different than an inspection program.
Okay, So now the inspection program will be, they will have to apply for an the owner will apply for an inspection of a property.
That's how some
Okay.
communities do it, yes.
Okay, and then a couple that I saw from State College as well as Bellevue, it's every 36 months, they're inspected. All right,
Yeah, some towns do it annually, biannually, or
Right.
triannually.
right, okay.
What is your hope with this?
Yeah.
What is your?
My hope is that some of the properties that have been downtrodden for so many years the owners are forced to clean it up, all right? There was one on McLaughlin Road for years, decades, that was run down, and nobody did anything until T.A. Robinson bought it, all right? And now it's pretty darn nice. So there's a lot of places that I just don't think that some people are paying the price for living in these.
Oh, yeah, we had an inspection program, they started it in Morris. And it got to be one of those things that, for student housing, it ran the spectrum.
Right.
I mean, there were kids that had, were living in bedrooms with broken windows and, it was 20 below outside, and, and there were places that were very well maintained. And what they did is they started an inspection program, which honestly was holy hell to get started, because there were some landlords in town that just, didn't want it. And, most of them were the good ones. But again, we had a boatload of landlords that were out of state, went and bought a house or something for their kids to live in while they were at college, and then didn't take care of things. And they did it's an annual fee with an inspection every 36 months. And it was primarily looking at health and safety issues, broken windows, smoke detectors, CO detectors, railings on stairways,
Right.
That sort of thing. And it was carried out, I think, by the building inspector. Was the one that
Was it successful?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It made a big difference. And there were a lot of people that hated it, but, as far as, it's still going on to my knowledge. But it was one of those things that the landlords were bitching and complaining for the first 2 years because they had to, fix broken windows and, that type of thing, or, fix front doors and stuff. And there were kids that were abusing the houses, the rental properties, and so the landlords were having to do stuff. But, ultimately it was a good thing for the community.
Okay.
I had a conversation recently with a real estate agent who was very enthused about properties being bought by guys who are renting them, because they never haggled about the price. They just paid whatever it was. And right off the bat, to me, that says, well, that's not a good plan.
Right.
If you know you're gonna make enough money that you don't need to discuss this price, and you're not here to care about anything that's going on in this meeting, to care about anything that the borough is trying to do, you're there to generate revenue for yourself and or your company.
Right.
I have a real struggle with that in residential, zoned residential areas. I mean, yes, you're zoned residential and there's a person in that house, but that's still a business. That is a business that is being operated.
Well, that's why, do we have an idea of how many rentals are locally owned versus outside of Bridgeville?
Of the ones that are registered, we would be able to determine that.
Yeah.
But,
Okay,
we're looking at roughly about 37–40% of the town's rental property.
okay,
Because 56% of it is owner occupied.
right,
You have 7% that's quote unquote vacant from transition, so
Right.
that leaves you 37–40% rental.
okay.
probably about like 2,500 units, so it's 37% of 2,500.
Justine, can I ask a question? Who would do the inspection?
Well, that's what we need to figure out.
Because
Our building inspection firm does do these
Okay.
third-party inspections.
All right,
who?
our building inspection firm.
So the borough pays for it then?
Well, I'm sure that we can recoup it by a fee,
Fee.
right?
It would be done by fee.
Yeah,
Yeah.
by fee.
When landlord's gonna build that in the rent?
Well,
Perhaps, yeah.
I mean, yeah,
Well, undoubtedly. And every 3 years, how would you coordinate that percentage of properties rotating on? You'd have a number of them every month. You have to have a,
Well, like in Morris, it was a phased-in approach. This is when we're gonna start,
right,
you know, and what they would do is notify landlords, okay, this year, you're gonna be inspected, next year, you know, these 20, 30, 50, whatever are gonna be inspected in the third year. So it goes kind of on a rotating basis.
it would be on the amount that the inspector could handle in a given period of time.
Right.
Because he's the one
Right.
who's gonna dictate what he can.
and
Right.
then that way you give everybody time
Yeah, to give, yeah,
to tidy up and that.
yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, there has to be some sort of, you know, format for which, you know, these are the things the inspection program's gonna look at.
Right,
These are
right.
the
Oh,
things-
there's plenty of that.
Yeah, yeah.
There's plenty of that out
It
there.
just seems that your reasoning for introducing it was because you had properties that were in need of it.
Correct.
So everybody's gonna have to have this because there's already an avenue for the county. A tenant can file with the county for a health permit and the county will come and inspect it.
Well, we'll have to look into all of that. I mean, let's just try to get our plan together for right now, just so we can discuss it next month. So I would say let's move forward with it in a 36-month renewal. Well, you know, like I said, I read quite a bit about it, so why don't we write down everything that we want and forward it to Joe?
Okay.
Or forward it to me and I'll put them all together and then forward it to Joe with your acceptance, okay? Is it okay? All right. Well, let's put that on our to-do list.
And then this would end up being the same thing like the first topic, is that once you guys flush out what you feel is to be a recommendation, it would be a recommendation for a council.
Council.
And then it would be a discussion on it for a council agenda,
Right.
and if they would like it, they would recommend to the solicitor to prepare an ordinance.
Right.
And then that ordinance would then, the next month, come up for advertising, and then that would enable public discussion such as what
This
we're
is
having
just-
here.
Right.
And
Just the
then,
initial conversation
yeah.
to see.
Okay,
correct, and then that's the avenue it would go.
okay.
It's a lengthy process, but I think is if there's interest in making a recommendation from planning commission, if you wanted to just flush it out,
Yeah.
and we'll get a letter after a bit.
Yeah.
Does Melissa have anything to?
Melissa, you have anything?
No, I don't.
Okay, so we owe that and that goes on our list. Okay, now, let's talk a little bit about the Baldwin Street.
Before we get to that,
Yeah.
I asked you a question. Do we have anything in the zoning about,
Like Airbnb or rental properties like that?
We do. Short-term rentals are permitted in the mixed-use districts. They're not permitted in the residential districts. We had a challenge, went to zoning hearing board a couple months back, where there was a property operating in the residential area. You're allowed your traditional month to month, but anything under a month to month kind of goes into a boarding house or hotel, such languages. Our zoning ordinance specifically allows bed and breakfast within the mixed use districts.
Okay.
So the solicitor came with a lengthy, I'm giving you like this analysis, is that by nature of that, in addition to some of the language that's already written regarding just rental, properties house defined, it only allows it in the mixed use. So there, at the time, I know 3 properties that are operating, or were operating as Airbnbs in town. 2 were in mixed use zoning districts, so they're permitted, and then 1 was in the residential district. She appealed to the zoning hearing board, lost her case, and was told to shut down.
Okay.
Was it somebody were they from Bridgeville?
Originally from Bridgeville, but moved to Florida and then
Kept their house here.
and turned it into an Airbnb.
Thank you.
All right, so, old business. So what I can report is the fact that via our recommendation to council, the council did go to West Penn Power to request streetlights be put up on Chess Street. Is it Chess?
There was three locations.
Station
in
Street
Acton,
near, right, Station Street,
near Shady, Murray, and
Right.
then Sarah and Forbes.
right, right. So those street lights will be put up sometime in the near future?
It's just getting, once the work order is processed through
Okay.
this Penn Power.
And what's going on with Chess? Does Chess have street lights?
Just a street light, I don't believe that was identified in the
No, it
plan.
wasn't. No.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, all right. And Community Cleanup Day. Melissa, you have anything to talk about Community Cleanup Day?
I do. So, I'm kind of proposing that we do register on earthday.org because they, you can give what they're on their
On what,
site,
Melissa?
like,
What the hell?
Earthday.org. Earthday.org.
Birthday, okay, sorry, thank you, go ahead.
yep. So that we register on that site, and then we can, advertise within the community that we are, we do have our cleanup listed on earthday.org, so we're participating with that, with a local cleanup. Dusty, I think you and I had talked about, like, letting people know that if they wanted to pick up supplies at the borough building, like at 9 a.m. on that day, and we can do a group photo, and as people go out and start to do cleanups throughout the community, if, they can take pictures. Joe, I guess the question would be, is there is there an email address that we could give to people to say, hey, email your photos from your cleanup area, and then we would later follow up with some social media?
Yeah, we could set up an email, or even if it's just email like an employee here.
Okay, okay.
Okay. And, I mean, do you think we could get a sub-page on the borough website to kind of list out where we're suggesting cleanup events take place?
Yeah, I think it's
And
something,
what-
if you write something up, we could have it right on the homepage.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we want to proclaim Earth Day an official Bridgeville holiday?
Do I get off?
Yeah.
It's a Saturday. Yeah, you're off. I'll call you boss for you. There you go.
Is that asking too much?
No, I believe, I've seen that done by like a municipal proclamation.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can take care of that.
yeah.
I think once, if you guys set a date, you let me know when the date is, we could have that
Okay.
on maybe potentially the April agenda, March agenda, I don't know.
Well, Earth Day is April 22nd.
So that gets it, our council meeting was gonna be the 10th, so it can be done. And It kind of goes all hand in hand,
Okay, all right,
but I just need a date then.
okay. All right,
And then I can get you a draft of that, I'll share with the
all right.
council or commission.
All right, and then lastly, and
Does Melissa have anything else?
Melissa, you have anything else to add?
Well, I was gonna ask, I mean, we obviously are big, a big piece of that is about cleanup, but Joe, are there any areas that within the parks or common spaces, that if we got like plants donated by residents, that you would want things planted?
It's a good question. We could bounce off the Parks Committee.
Yeah.
Okay. 'Cause some people might like to do that. I mean, it's early enough in the season that really we would just be planting perennials. It'd be too early to do anything else.
All right, and then last but not least, huh?
One question.
Yeah,
So, Jill, if we get an organization that decides to clean up around one of the parks, Triangle Park, Cook's Pool, McLaughlin, they put stuff in it, they go around and pick stuff up, can they leave it in the park for the borough to dispose of on Monday?
That's what we did in the past, is that we would just pile all the bags up in certain locations. And we tried to know where they were ahead of time, but if not, we could just do a blitz to go find the bags.
and last year we got the vests and the garbage bags and the gloves, I think, right?
We got that all donated from PennDOT.
Oh,
We would
okay.
do the same thing this year,
Okay.
I could take care of that.
Thank you.
All right, and then last but not least is the Baldwin Street lot, which is, hold on, I have it right here. 684. Oh, crap.
You're talking about the Hillies one?
Yes, the Hill.
That was 646, 648.
646, 648. Now, I did have a email conversation with the manager from Tree Pittsburgh, all right? And he suggested that we do a Zoom call first, and the agenda was already set. So I'm not able to do anything tonight, but I would like everybody's approval that we can and will plant trees on that particular lot, or we will take that recommendation to council. All right? So,
Are we talking about having quote-unquote professionals plant trees, or are we talking about having community residents plant trees?
we have got
You do with Tree Pittsburgh, it would be, you would do it yourselves, but might have tree tenders come and help, like.
We could have the public works guys with
Yeah.
equipment.
Yeah,
Probably
exactly.
that's about it.
Yeah. It's not really. hard to do.
Well, we planted about a bajillion trees after we built on that lot, and that ain't easy,
right.
especially for
Yeah.
people who are not.
We might find coal back there.
Well,
We might, we found some very interesting crap, it was pretty amazing actually, but I guess what I'm maybe thinking is and if there's an organization that's already got a program, that's awesome. I'm just thinking that there might be instances where a helper be, if there's a
Right, right.
of
Well-
us elderly people that would be
I think
interested in doing it, but would appreciate some younger, stronger guys.
I think the way that they work is that they come out, or they'll look at the lot, regardless if it's in person or via a picture. All right, and take a look at it, determine what native trees are the best.
The right tree, the right place.
Right, and how many, because he and I had spoken before about the massive amount of native trees, which is that Japanese methodology. And it built a reforested, but he said that's too many trees for that small of a lot. So I will once I get everybody's approval, then I'll go back to him and say, okay, let's set something up for next month, so that we could just start the discussion, and then I can put him on the agenda for next month.
Are they, was there interest when you talked to them to partner with us to provide us with trees?
Yes,
And then, like, bridging with what Bitsy was saying, like, I can't imagine asking like us to do them. Like, we have equipment and manpower that we can have all these holes dug ahead of time. And then if Pittsburgh, if we can partner with them, then just provide us the expertise on what's the best and maybe some funding.
yeah,
It's probably this way, because within this year's budget, council did put money aside for some trees.
yeah,
So we do have a small budget to do like some tree plantings on public areas.
okay,
Like I had like a small list of locations that I knew that like we already have municipal right of way, or they're like parks where we took out trees recently that we need to put them back in so that we just keep the cycle going. So I wouldn't mind if you're okay with it, but I want to make that like a planning commission thing, because one, it needs to be the community's project. And it would be nice to get you the list, say, hey, what type of trees does Tree Pittsburgh think would go in these locations? And then we have a small budget and we can start whittling away at it. And then if this program takes, then we just see how gradually we can start
right,
growing.
with the cannon, you're right,
Big cover. Yes.
yeah,
So I have a couple locations in addition to your lot.
yeah,
If I could get it to you,
Yeah.
probably guys, I could email you tomorrow. And
Okay.
then when we talk to them, we could see if there's interest to run with this.
Okay.
And if that's the case, then this could be a nice partnership that we can develop with.
right. I mean, hell, they're always giving trees.
They were gonna give us 30 trees
Yeah.
before, free,
Yeah.
didn't even have to write a grant for it.
That'll work out great.
I have,
I'll get you that tomorrow.
Okay,
have
And then it would be nice is that, and then if there is interest in just looking at a calendar, we could have this all lined up, bounce off the Tree Pittsburgh folks next month, and we could present to council at our
Correct.
April meeting, and then we
Right.
proclaim Earth Day,
Oh.
a recommendation from the planning commission for phase 1 of
Yeah.
a public shade tree planting, and they're proposed at these 7 locations. Tree Pittsburgh comes in the spring, Public Works dig them, everything goes on.
okay,
Calendars are kind of just aligned.
One of the issues with the lots that got leveled is, they basically just backfilled, a lot with a debris house.
they did they backfill those? That lot, that
Your-
sloping lot?
Basically, they knocked the houses down and left a lot of the bricks and stuff, and then they just went back in and covered with a couple feet of dirt.
Yeah, correct. So it's about 2 foot down. You're going to experience like busted up foundation walls,
Yeah.
bricks. But the first 2-3 feet will be filled.
Okay.
But the thing that we're going to experience is the hilly lot. Just some history on that was that when they tore down the house, the back wall of the house remained. And we didn't touch that back wall of the house, just so we didn't prevent the hillside from going down. So that hill is artificial. It's a lot of debris and
Yeah,
fill just to make it a slope so it
Oh,
look
okay.
natural
okay,
versus going up the street seeing a wall.
Right.
Right.
he'll be able to tell us, I'm sure.
But we have a backhoe. We
Yeah.
can get through anything.
Okay, all right,
I know when we talked about this earlier, months ago, I think, we were talking about other things besides trees, in addition to trees.
for that particular lot.
No, just
Other ones.
generically speaking,
Correct,
things
right.
that, specifically talking about Baldwin Street when we had that a few months ago, at the
Right.
meeting where we were talking about Baldwin Street. And a couple of the things that were sort of discussed about that were, in addition to the trees, were things like community gardens and stuff.
Correct.
And I personally have had an occasion to look into some things about both bumblebees and butterflies, and the stuff that attracts bumblebees and butterflies. And I'm wondering if we're just gonna ignore that for now, and just do the trees, or can we also
I think we
include
could-
some conversation about some things that are good for the earth and good for the community and good for all kinds of them?
Can we put that on the agenda for next month?
Certainly.
All right. That way then we can just start taking one step at a time. I actually have a niece who's a forester, give me a list of, there's a company up north that does native seeds. Okay? And they have a variety of native seeds. And she said that's exactly what, when she goes out there and recommends to people what they should put on their land, and just throw out these seeds and watch them grow. So anyway, so we'll talk about that next month. We'll put that on the agenda.
Butterflies and bees thing.
Anything else?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
I noticed that the borough's gone through and put up split rail fences on some of the properties up Alden Street. They look nice, Joe.
Yeah, we have people driving through.
I know.
Yeah.
But the split rail does, it classes it up a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
put a fence on Janeway,
Yeah, I know.
on the corner of Janeway and Baldwin,
That's what the fence is.
because somebody's driving right through.
That's what it means.
Okay.
But that's where, it
It
looks the
looked
nicest there.
Yeah, it looked nice. There was a couple of fences, a couple of properties with fences. It looked nice.
All right. Any comments from the peanut gallery out there? Joe? Nina? No? No?
Anyway,
My interest, I guess, would be for the council meeting. In the next 2 years, there's gonna be a lot of road construction work.
a little bit.
Yeah, well, Bank Street, right? This summer.
When's the schedule for Bank?
You're supposed to start end of March. I
This
don't
year,
know
yeah.
when, but last time we checked with PennDOT a couple weeks ago,
So
it said they
Bank
were
will be
supposed
for
to.
Chartiers?
Paving, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
That this would be an agenda for the council meeting, things. Also, Chartier Street, I think, I've talked to somebody from PennDOT, and it's 18 months out anyhow.
Correct, it's a 24-25 project.
Yeah, 24, 25.
Yeah. And Justine and I were talking about the bump outs for that. And I guess, again, look into if I can assist in any way with some input on where, because we were talking about locations that can have bump outs, can't have bump outs.
I think they already decided where they're gonna be, like, Winfield.
Not just probably for a different meeting,
Oh, yeah.
but good. So-
Yeah, no, I think they already, the location for the bump outs have already been picked, correct?
Yeah, PennDOT did a review
Yeah.
off of our active transportation plan. We proposed 4 locations to them. 2 were a go. The one at Dewey, PennDOT said no because of radius concerns.
Sure.
And then the one at Winfield and Bank, or not Winfield Bank, Elizabeth and Bank was essentially cut because of cost.
Right.
And that was it. It's doable.
Right.
It was just that
They're in Dewey, or no, Greg,
Greg and then at Winfield.
and Winfield.
Correct.
The other thing is too, is that John Ollier has his group at is it CMU or Pitt?
I believe Penn.
Pitt. All right, and their group has requested time in front of us to discuss their findings in regards to a roundabout at the intersection of Mayview and New York. Right?
No,
maybe.
Bank. It's at Bank Street,
Bank.
Lesbian and May.
Okay, that mix up there. So,
So are they going to the St. Clair meeting?
I don't know, is St. Clair the planning, or is it the,
We
oh,
don't
they're,
even, we don't even know what they're
yeah, no,
saying.
we're getting it. We're gonna get we'll get their thoughts and their ideas and their presentation beforehand.
But isn't that intersection in St. Clair, not Bridgeville?
That's what I thought too.
Part of it is, right?
It's split.
Yeah.
Now, and I know where you're coming from,
Okay.
all right? And I think that John Ollier wants them to give them a bit of life experience.
Okay.
So I figure the more we know, especially the more I know, the better educated I am about that, I can be able to stand a little stronger when it comes down to something happening.
Doesn't stand stronger with Upper St. Clair? Just saying.
Walk by
You have anything else?
No, no.
Nick, we forgot to ask you, do you need anything? All right.
All right, so if that's the case, then I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
I need a second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Uh,
Meeting's closed.
Thank you.